Welcome to the Whitetail Advantage Podcast with your host, Brett Bovin. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. It's your host, Brett Bovin, and this is the show, the Electronic Campfire, the show for all hunters and outdoorsmen alike, where we can get together, share stories, and talk about the topics out there in hunting world. And it's just nice to learn strategies and become better hunters and better outdoorsmen overall. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the show, we do a live show Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Each week we cover a new state. And for instance, this week we're in New Hampshire. So we're excited to get into our guest and learn more about his hunting strategies. And I'm going to go lie, I've seen his wall and holy shit. I'm also excited to learn what it's like to hunt out there in New Hampshire. If you have any questions for myself or our guest for tonight during the show, feel free to drop them in the comments or send me a message through Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I have that stuff right up here in my monitor right here, so we can watch out for those as well. If you ever want to be a guest on the show, feel free to send me a message at Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and or you can send me an email at brettbowman@whitetailadvantage.com. We also have a saying on the show, put your cord in a slot machine. And what I simply mean by that is to help share the show. I strongly believe hunting is a dying sport, a dying lifestyle, and we need your help out there to help share the show. So all we ask out there is for you as the audience to help share the show. Help us get one new friend. Little housekeeping notes here. If you use the code GP10, you can get 10% discount off Ghillie Puck products. And make sure to go check out MAGNUS, BROADHEADS, and Grizz Media. All right, finally, enough of that intro boring crap that makes me want to fall asleep every time I say it. Anyways, it's Tuesday, July 23rd. It's episode 90. Man, we're 10 episodes away from episode 100. And I believe episode 100, we're going to be covering North Carolina. So we're excited for that. Anyways, like I said, it's New Hampshire week, and we got our guest tonight, Brett Joy. So enough of me jibber jabbering, and let's get him on for tonight. Okay, guys? Let's get him going. What's up, brother?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
For anyone that doesn't know you, man, can you give a little background about yourself?
Well, as you alluded to, I'm from New Hampshire, where I grew up, where I started hunting. I think the most, not the most unique, but generally, I guess, fairly unique thing about me is that I didn't grow up in a hunting family. So I grew up in a family that was outdoors pretty often. My dad's big into fly fishing, and we actually had a kennel of Siberian Huskies, and we used to race sled dogs. So it's not like I wasn't outside in the outdoors, but just on the hunting side. But it was something I guess I was drawn to, and I started doing on my own. And so I'm pretty self-taught when it comes to that. And if you know anything about New Hampshire, which a lot of your listeners may not, but I guess they'll learn about it tonight. It's a very challenging place to hunt, very low deer densities. So I had it tough when I started. And I think it made me a better hunter. I had to be good and learn what I was doing. And so, yeah, I grew up struggling and learned how to struggle and learned how to kind of grind and figured out what really works and what matters and what makes me successful. And then maybe what doesn't. So we actually started, I guess, filming my hunts, maybe 15 years ago or so. So on the filming side, filmed with buddies for a while, just, not very seriously. Then I filmed for Midwest Whitetail, and Bill Winke. That was, it was almost 10 years ago now when that was going on. I think that was from like 2013 to maybe 15 or 16. And now there's a couple other projects we worked in between now and then, but now we have a YouTube channel called Just Hunt Club, and we film all our hunts. And it's a group of guys, group of friends. It's based out of the Northeast. So a lot of hunts from New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, New York. And then we also travel kind of all over the U.S. and Canada hunting as well, but we're kind of based in the Northeast. As far as my hunting goes, I'm kind of the same way. Most of my hunting at home has been in New Hampshire, but I've hunted, I don't know, maybe 20 states or something like that. Not quite sure how many, but a fair amount. Love the turkey hunt as well in the spring, and whitetail hunt. Those are the two big ones, but starting to slowly creep into the big game scene as well. But we'll see. Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and I don't have much anymore. Have a young family and 4 kids, so it's a bit challenging. So that's okay though.
4 kids. So how do you, real
Yep.
quick, how do you find the time to manage hunting life and family time? There's a lot of talking with the wife.
My wife's awesome, and she's super understanding. Part of the reason I married her, she understands, what I love to do. But aside from that, it's not only just whether she is okay with what I do. I still want to be there for my children and spend time with them, right? So I want to be in the woods, but I also want to be with them. So it is definitely a balancing act. I think that I have a little more flexibility with my schedule at work now to hunt, where I didn't when I was younger. And, I was like weekends, and that was it. So, and maybe some weekdays occasionally when I could get in the woods. But I learned to be super efficient with my time in the woods. I hate to say it, but I always feel like I'm rushed in the woods, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast with what I do. But I learned how to be super effective and get a lot done in a short period of time, and, pick apart situations and pieces of property and kind of cut out the BS and go right to the meat and potatoes and not waste much time. So that's kind of been my hunting style for a long time. I think I've gotten pretty good at it as far as like that style of, efficiency. But I would say that if I didn't have that, there's no way I could do what I do. It just wouldn't work. I mean, people would be surprised when they hear how many days I actually probably hunt a year. It's not as many as you'd think. I do maybe probably hunt more than the average guy, but it's not like I'm out there, 40 days a fall in the stand or in the woods. It's not the case. I may spend, I don't know, 20 to 30 days in the woods. And that's not even all, it's not, may not be all day. It may be, an afternoon or evening. So, and that's over, September 1st is when I usually start hunting somewhere, and then end, then to December. So it's I get to hunt a fair amount, but it's not like I'm in the woods, every day of the season.
So you mentioned earlier though that you didn't grow up in a hunting family. What eventually got you into the hunting world and bow hunting and stuff like that?
Well, being, like I said, in the outdoors in general and seeing wildlife definitely helped. When I was aware of hunting, I wanted to bow hunt. I don't know. I was, it's tough to say what exactly what made me want to shoot an animal or bow hunt an animal, but maybe I used to love like Indians, like Native Americans. I thought they were very cool when I was a young kid, and, they bow hunted. So that may be the earliest influence on me. What else? I think it just went from there. I just love to be outside and always wanted to pursue wildlife. And I obviously I shoot and kill wildlife. There's in deer, there's no doubt about it. But I definitely love learning about and interacting with animals more than I love killing them, if that makes sense. I'm very fascinated with, biology of like whitetails and behavior and all that stuff. So, I'm more interested in learning about them. I do like to shoot them too, but it's not like the very favorite part that I have. Although, like I said, I do shoot them. So I'm not denying that or downplaying that by any means. So
I say this all the time, and I strongly believe if you know the whitetail deer inside and out, the biology of them, what their makeup is, what they're doing day in and day out, month to month, year to year, you're going to become a better hunter overall. But I think it all starts with the basics of learning the inside and out of what a whitetail deer actually is and the makeup of it.
I would agree with that. That's my philosophy as well. I think that I try to learn as much as I can and, study whitetail deer, learn, and even if it's, not something that's going to help me harvest a deer, I'm still interested in learning about them, and about why they do what they do. So I have a pretty analytical mind, I'd say. So I definitely like to study and observe deer and their behavior and their triggers and all that stuff, and learn from one. And the coolest thing is I think that, deer or whitetails in particular are different almost in every landscape that they live. I've learned that from kind of hunting them all over the place, but I've also learned that, individuals are very different as well within like the same herd, which is cool. So it's almost like every buck that you're after, you get to learn about his unique personality. To an extent, obviously we're not, attached at the hip and following around the woods, but with the limited interaction, the observation, trail camera stuff, reading sign, and following them year to year, you can kind of learn about an individual, and I think that's pretty neat. And I really enjoy that part of it, honestly.
Yeah. There's a lot of times I'll be looking at trail camera photos, or I'll be out there winter scouting and stuff, and I'll look at him like, why is that deer doing this? Where are you coming from and shit like that? And that's how my brain just works. And it's cool to see I'm not the only person that thinks like that. So
no, I think, I think a lot of us think like that.
I did want to ask, what type of gear do you got? What are you running?
As far as
everything, what do you use? You don't have to get down to the details about, but
so as far as gear, I guess I could start with like clothing. I wear some Sitka gear. That's a lot of my colder weather stuff. There's a small company in Vermont that makes really good wool gear that I wear as well. They're called Stagger Gear. They're a new company, but is kind of putting a modern spin on wool clothing, if that makes sense. High quality technical wool clothing. It's really kind of I think an innovative company. Wool's great, as well as some of the synthetics that have come out, but wool is just a great thing to wear. Let's see what else. I actually have a pair of pants that aren't even from the hunting industry I like to wear. They're not even camouflage. I'm trying to remember the name of them. I think it's actually a company in Canada that makes them. I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't really discriminate. I'm not a huge camo guy. I shouldn't say I'm not a huge camo. I don't think camo is particularly important in a lot of situations. So I don't, if there's something that's like, green or whatever color that will blend in the woods and looks natural, I'm not afraid to wear that, as long as it suits what I need it to do, whether it's a base layer, mid layer, outer layer, hat, whatever. So that's kind of my clothing. For boots, I'm not a fan of rubber boots, so most of the boots I run are Crispies. I really like those and prefer them to anything else. I'm lucky because my feet don't really get cold. So I can rock their boots down at probably like single digits and not have my feet get cold, which is nice because I know that's something that's a big struggle for a lot of guys. As far as, let's see, we work with Trophy Line. So I use, and I've actually just got their new sticks, which are pretty amazing sticks. They're made out of a alloy called Magnite. It's a magnesium alloy, and it's like as light as carbon and like way stronger than both carbon and aluminum. So those just came out, and I got my hands on them. Actually, I don't know if they're out yet, but I did get my hands on them either way for an early season hunt. So those are kind of the mobile sticks that I use. I'll use their saddle or a small portable tree stand as well on occasion. Just depends on the situation. And then a lot of my stands are particularly if they're way back in and I know I'm going to hunt them day after day, I'll set like a more permanent hang on stand or not semi-permanent, right? It's just a hang on, we can move it. But, and that I'm not too picky on that, honestly. Maybe I have XOPs and lone wolves and what else, some old muddy stands. So that's kind of the stand situation. Let's see what else, boots. Right now I'm shooting a couple PSE bows, but I've shot PSEs and expeditions and Hoyts and whatnot, so I'm not really tied to anyone. I just happen to like the two I got now and feel pretty comfortable with them, so I've been shooting them. What else? Serious arrows, iron wool broadheads. What else? As far as like a spot hog sight, Hamsky rest on my bows. I guess for guns, we shoot Mossberg. So I shoot a Mossberg Patriot rifle for my rifle. I shoot a smokeless Encore conversion for a muzzleloader, where smokeless muzzleloaders are legal. And then if they're not legal, I shoot a Woodman Arm muzzleloader, which is a company in New Hampshire that has a really nice lightweight muzzle that's great for, hunting in the woods and tracking or still hunting, stand hunting too, but, geared for that more fast shots and lightweight mobile type hunter. What else? Trail cameras, I've run a bunch of different ones and I've always like tinkering. Right now I'm running stealth cams and tacticams. Those are the main two. I'm trying to think if there's anything else there. I don't think at the moment. I have some old coverts too, that my buddy in Canada is running. So those are kind of the three there. I'm trying to think if there's much else. Probably missing something. As far as optics, I mean, I like good glass. I feel like my eyes don't work well in low light. I don't think anybody's work particularly well, but I feel like mine really struggle. So I really prefer like nice glass, like Zeiss or Swarovski or whatever. I do a nice pair of like Nikons when they used to make hunting stuff that I bought. And I remember they're probably 10 years old, but I bought them through a Midwest Whitetail deal. And they were like $2,200 binoculars that I got for $1,200. So, and they're pretty good glass, honestly, for that. They're like their top end glass. So yeah, trying to use much else. Do you think of anything that I missed? Anything?
I think you nailed it.
Sticks out. Okay. Yeah, that's, I guess, the gear. I like gear, and I kind of really like my gear technical, but at the end of the day, I don't know that it matters, but not as much as some of the other stuff.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned about camo. I'm the type of guy where I don't care if I match whatever what the camo looks like. To me, I look at like Fred Bear. He went out in jeans and a red flannel. So I'm not going to go out there and spend. I'm going to get what's comfortable for me and that's lightweight and quiet and stuff like that. If I don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on just one piece article of clothing, I'm not going to do it. That's just me.
Yeah. Yep. I think that the function of the clothing matters more than, the appearance for sure.
Yeah.
I like things that look good. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not too worried about it. Oh, I wear a fair amount of solids, I guess is what I'd say. But everything's got to work. It has a purpose. If I bring it in the woods, I'm not going to bring extra stuff, and I'm not going to bring stuff that doesn't work.
First off, I'm not pretty enough to win a beauty contest, but I'm definitely not going to win a beauty contest out in the woods. So I just don't give a shit.
Yeah. I don't think the deer care what you look like after you shoot them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird calling you Brett because it's my name, Brett, too. So are you a public or a private type hunting type guy?
I'd say I'm a both type of guy. I'd say I'm a hunting type of guy. I hunt both, and I've hunted both for a long time. I have some, I would say in general, when I do hunt public, which is it depends. I'd say it depends on the year, right? Actually, that's the biggest thing. If I'm chasing a deer that I want to hunt and he lives on public land, guess what? I'm a public land hunter. If I find a bigger one on private land that year that I really want, and then I'm a private land hunter. I don't really, put myself in any sort of category. And to be frank, I don't know that how healthy that whole public land, private land butting heads thing is for hunting community either. It kind of drives me crazy, honestly, like these days when everybody's, so concerned about that. But yeah, I would say that there are, I think that, people that maybe live in a really super pressured state where public land's really not great, lots of pressure, just not a great experience. You have to realize that there's states, I would say to an extent, my state is like this, although I know there's states that are far better, but like some states, public land is just as good as private, right? So like, oh, I killed a public land deer. Well, okay. Does that make it any better than a private land deer? It probably was not any harder to kill than a private land deer in that state, but there's other states where it's very different. So I don't know that it's particularly important or useful to talk about that though. I think there's just so much out there, and it's kind of getting old and tired when people keep going back to it. I feel like I just think we need to come together and be hunters and not private land hunters and public land hunters. We're all hunters, right? I think that's important,
Right.
at least from my perspective. And I feel like I'm in a decent position to say that because I do hunt both a fair amount and have hunted, private and public all over the dang place, honestly. So, yeah, I mean, it just depends on where the buck that I want to shoot is living on and where it is that season, right?
Right. Yeah, I think this new day and age of, especially with social media, we get so concerned of, oh, you didn't shoot him on public land or you shot him on private land. It seems like you said perfectly. It seems like we're constantly butting heads at the end of the day of just like one's better than the other or vice versa and stuff like that. It's like well, why'd you shoot that deer and why didn't you let him grow and whatnot? And to me, it's just like, just go out there and fucking hunt. It doesn't matter if you're out there doing public land, because private land, like you said perfectly, what difference does it make if he was on public land, private land? Why do you have to say it was a public land deer? It's still a deer. You went out hunting, and great job harvesting him.
Yeah, we've tried to get away from the YouTube stuff that we do. We try to get away from hammering on that too much, and we're just all hunters, obviously. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I do have some good private land that I hunt and actually own, but it's funny because I probably spend less time hunting there than I do on public land, honestly, which is kind of funny. It just depends, you know what I mean? It just depends.
Mm-hmm.
Think we need to be hunters,
right?
And realize that every place has its unique challenge. And nothing is apples to apples. And, I just comparing yourself to other hunters and is just, I think, in my opinion, silly because no one's in the same situation. Even if they're hunting the exact same piece, say a private farm or the same piece of public land, well, there's no two guys that have the same resources available to them financially. There's no two guys that have the same time available to them, right? So everybody is on a different playing field. That'd be like saying you're the best baseball team to play on a soccer field. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're better than the Reds, like the Patriots are better than the Red Sox. Like, what does that mean? It's not in the same. It's not in the same thing. Like, what do you mean they're better? It doesn't. What? They're not even playing the same game. And so that's what I think people need to realize. Just have fun, enjoy your time outside, and get what you want out of it, and seek the experience and the journey and that you want. And as long as it's not abusing the resource, and as long as you're doing it legally, like I think it's awesome, and that's what people should pursue. Not the I'm better than this guy, or I hunt the hardest, or my buck's the biggest, or I hunt whatever. That stuff is just, man, it's just, I think, super toxic for the community, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people will say that stuff, and all they've killed is these guys. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it's almost like a cop out for them to say that.
Yeah.
So once again, I feel like I'm in a decent position to say that because I have shot some nice deer. I have hunted all, across many different landscapes and many different states, and across public and private and everything in between. So, everything from a highly piece of public to like really good managed farms. So I've kind of seen all aspects of it. And at the end of the day, it's all fun. It's all really, it's just about being out there with, for me, nature, and then, family and friends, enjoying your time. And, for me, some of the time challenging myself. That's a big part of it too. And that might not be why people hunt, just to challenge themselves. They may hunt just to be outside and be with their family. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That's just the experience they want. And sometimes I'm in the, spend time with my friend and family, hunt. And sometimes I'm in the, hey, I want to shoot a giant buck, and I'm really challenging myself to do so. So, and both of them they're very different, but they're both awesome. And there's nothing wrong with either one. And I think people need to realize that there's nothing wrong with, if you're a meat hunter, if you just want to go out and shoot stuff, if you want to spend time with your family, if you want to go to deer camp, or you want to pay, a guide $10,000 to shoot a 200-inch deer. Not a huge fan of the high fence thing, although if it's legal, whatever, but you know, do it, have fun. Doesn't matter.
Right.
You don't have anybody to answer to. Is like I said, as long as you're not abusing the resource and you're doing it legally.
Right. And I think we get, as a hunting community, we get such a bad rap of, well, you're just out there killing and slaughtering all these animals, and it seems like we need to kind of back each other more and have each other's backs more. And I think, like, for me, when it comes to competition wise for hunting, the only competition I have is me against me. Like, how can I better myself each and every day that I'm going out there becoming a better hunter? I try not to ever compare myself to another hunter, because, like you said, my situation is never going to be the same as whatever the other person might be, because if you take financial stuff out of the equation, stuff like that, and you just break it down to experience and just the resources overall, it's not going to be the same with those two. So I never try to compare myself. I always try to, how can I be a better hunter, and how can I beat my last year of me hunting, moving on to next year? That's how I look at it from my own perspective.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think hunting is a great place for someone to grow as a person and to challenge himself. I think it's also a great place for someone to get away from, work and stress. And it's a great place to make connections with other people and build relationships. So there's it can serve many different, functions. So figure out what you want out of it and go for it, and don't be concerned with how anybody else does it, because it really doesn't matter. And I think we need to be a lot less concerned with how other people are doing it. That's for sure. And be more concerned with what we're doing, and, are we enjoying our time? Life's short.
Exactly.
It blows my mind when I see people, talking about other hunters or the way other people do things. It's like, whatever.
Well, I look at people that comment, go down this rabbit hole real quick. I see people that make comments about stuff like that, and I just look at them like, well, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, what?
Yeah, I mean,
it just I shake my head and like, who?
Man, unless you live like in a freaking hut on the, in the wilderness in a mountain, and you like hunt deer with like a pointy stick and a loincloth, you probably have no room to criticize anybody else, right? There's always someone that does shit that's harder than you do it, okay?
Yeah.
Like, you're not, like, there's always a harder way. There's always a more badass way to shoot a deer that's, so let's just stop this, because it just doesn't matter. And you're never going to win that. Like, I've done some really hard stuff deer hunting that's like brutally hard, and I've done some stuff that's wasn't particularly challenging, honestly, but it was really fun. So who cares? Let's stop. I think it's nonsense. I'm just so sick of it, to be honest with you. It's everybody's just like, look what I did, or I do it harder, because it's like, oh man, who cares?
Right.
I just like hearing about people that have a good time and have success no matter how they do it. And, if you're enthusiastic about it and you love it, then that's infectious. And I like to be around those type of people that just, you can tell the people that truly do it for the right reasons and love it. And those are the people that I enjoy spending time with and talking to.
Let's dive into New Hampshire and kind of get into the mix of your hunting style and in New Hampshire hunting. First off, what's the terrain like out there, so people get a grasp of what it's like to hunt out in New Hampshire?
Yeah, I'd say statewide we are like 90+% forested, so not hardly any agriculture. We do have the Connecticut River Valley that runs along the western side of the state, north to south, that does have some ag, but that's about it. It's pretty limited. Outside of that, there are some small dairy farms, some hay, a lot of little hobby farms, but I mean, a big field here is like 10 acres. So, and there just aren't many of them. So very little to no agriculture. I'd say most of it is like right next to houses on the road, and it's little orchards, apple orchards, or small little fields. Like I said, hobby farms, horse farms, that type of stuff. That's what you'll see, as far as open ground. The rest is just timber for the most part. As far as topography, I guess to break that down, most of it is like a hardwood softwood mix. We have, depending on where you are, a lot of softwood. We have a lot of hemlock, a lot of white pine, spruce and fir as well. And then we have, your typical northern hardwoods, like we have some red oak, some white oak when you get kind of towards the coast and the lower elevations, but not a lot of white oak as you get, mid-state or higher into higher elevations. A lot of beech, a lot of white and yellow birch. Trying to think if there's any other major trees. Those are the main ones I would say that occupy most of the timber around here. It's very rocky soils, lots of boulders, big rocks. And as far as topography goes, as you're out towards the coast, it's relatively flat, or I'll say rolling, not a lot of topography change. I mean, I wouldn't say flat. That's, compared to maybe, northern Indiana, it looks like mountains, but it's not flat, but it's rolling. There's not a ton of elevation change, although it's not flat. As you start to head kind of west and north away from the coast, it gets more and more mountainous until you get to basically the White Mountains in Mount Washington, which is, I think, 6,200 to 6,300 feet. So that's the highest point in the Northeast. I think there's a mountain in Georgia that's higher, or maybe the Carolinas. But that's the highest point east of Mississippi. So very mountainous in a lot of areas. Yeah, I mean, and then once you get further north, you get into like the North Woods, they call it. And that's still pretty mountainous, not quite as mountainous as like that mountain range that runs to the center of the state, which is the White Mountains. But that is a lot of big woods, timber company land, and a lot of spruce fir forests and very little, pretty much no mass crops except for maybe beech, but lots of, like I said, spruce, fir, birch, that type of stuff.
So with it being a lot of dense woods, do you have a lot of places where you can do food plots? Do you see a lot of those out there, or not really?
No, not really. I mean, I have some on a piece of property I own here, but it's tough. It's the soil is tough. It's rocky. It's definitely a challenge. I've been successful at it, but it definitely is not easy. It beats the crap out of your equipment. That's for sure. And like I had a property that I sold, I think had, what would have been 6 or 7 acres of food plots. So that was a big undertaking for sure to plant that much. But yeah, not a lot of that at all. Like I said, not even a lot of like hunting, even those little fields or orchards. There's some, you can catch some deer in like early bow season, which our season opens September 15th, kind of on the fringes of those areas. But pretty much after that, once they kind of settle into the fall range, most of that stuff is at night in those areas, or the deer just do not relate to them. There's probably, and a lot of our hay is not good hay because of the soil. So it's not like I'm talking like a real nice alfalfa like hay field that like there's high quality browse in. That's not the case. It's like weeds and grasses and like just not really high quality hay. So there's just not a lot for them there, particularly once the mass crop starts falling. If you're in like an area of the state that has mass, and like I said, that's mainly oak, beech, and apples. We do have a fair amount of apples. It seems like every old homestead had an apple tree on it. In the north, well, I guess New Hampshire we're focusing on. I talk about the Northeast in general a lot, but we're focusing on New Hampshire. Yeah, there's a fair amount of apples, but then once you're away from those houses and roads and old homesteads, there's just not a lot out there. So the deer are relying on mast, like hard mast, and just browse. We are fortunate to have a lot of logging going on and timber cuts. So that is a big food source for our deer and a big source of quality habitat, and we have a fair amount of it, which is great because without that we would definitely not have. We don't have a lot of deer. We have a pretty healthy population, and most of the deer are healthy, and we do get some big ones. But without that, I don't think we'd have that at all. It'd be a real struggle for the deer.
What's your hunting seasons like? I mean, when does it start?
Yeah. So archery starts September 15th and runs through December 15th, and that is the duration of the season. And then the gun seasons fall within that. Muzzleloader actually starts before rifle. It's much like Virginia in that regard. And that always starts the Saturday closest to November 1st. I think it may be November 2nd this year. I'd have to look on it. It doesn't matter. I guess it's irrelevant. But right around November 1st, we'll say muzzleloader start. That runs for 10 days, and then our rifle season starts. And our rifle season usually comes in between the 10th and the 15th of November, and then it runs till the end of the first week in December generally. So because we're so heavily forested, there's not a huge advantage to rifle hunting over muzzleloader hunting, if that makes sense. Usually don't get a second shot. It's so dense and you're not shooting long distances most of the time. So in my mind, effectively gun season starts on November 1st and runs through the first week of December. Obviously there's that change in weapon in the middle, but I don't think it makes a huge impact on the effectiveness of the hunter. And the muzzleloader season is a very big deal around here. It's like the opening day of gun season. So yeah, I would say 5 weeks. So what is that? 3 months of archery hunting and about 5 weeks of gun hunting.
That's not bad. And then the rut, when's it correlate kind of into those seasons?
It's I mean, the gun season affects the ruts, particularly in more pressured areas. So I would say, pretty confidently say the peak of our rut and peak breeding leases around November 19th every year. So a touch later than the Midwest, I would say. So yeah, at that point, if they've been hunted for 2 or 3 weeks, they definitely react. And the rut behavior is a little bit different. I try to get to areas where they said there's not many people hunting, so I can see that rutting activity. Because it seems like pressure really suppresses that, particularly during daylight.
And it seems like you're the first state where your season starts fairly early in September, but it seems like it ends quick though, in a way, in December compared to any other state. That, like, for other states I've heard they talk that they open up in September, but they're running all the way to basically the end of January. It seems like you're done this week of December.
I'm trying to think if there's a state that I know of that closes earlier. I think Maine may close around the same time frame.
Is that kind of similar up there in the Northeast, or is it just your state kind of mainly?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, like, I would say in general, they close earlier. Our winters come probably sooner than a lot of the rest of the country. I think the big thing that we have, particularly in northern New England, northern New Hampshire, of course, even central New Hampshire, is our deer yard in the winter for the most part. If we get no snow, they don't, but we usually have significant snowfall. Actually, I think New Hampshire is the snowiest state in the country, statistically, actually. If it's not the number one, it's in the top 3 for sure. I actually remember looking that up relatively recently. I was surprised to find that it was. I thought it would have been a western state, but on average, we get more snowfall in a year than any other state. So we get a lot of snow, and that drives deer into like winter habitats and deer yards, and where they're pretty vulnerable. I think a lot of the reason our seasons end early, and I guess that would be pretty common for northern New England, even northern New York, like the Adirondack Mountains or Adirondack Park, which is a northern zone in New York, that ends early as well. But it's pretty typical, I would say, at that latitude in the east to end right around the middle of December. So yeah, I would say it is. Southern New England, like Massachusetts, goes to the end of the year. I think Rhode Island goes into like January. I think Connecticut does as well. The southern tier in New York goes to the end of the year. So yeah, I think the biologists set the season based on kind of the climate, I guess, if you will. So yeah, I would love, I think that a lot of areas you could probably, I'd love to see like a late bow season personally. But we have a pretty decent season, I'd say, in New Hampshire. We get to start hunting the 15th, which is earlier than most states. So it's give and take, I guess.
Right. I want to say this real quick before I ask about tags. So I looked up the 10 snowiest states. New Hampshire is number one, an average of 175 inches of snow per year. Then you got Maine, Vermont, Alaska, Wyoming, Michigan, New York, Utah, Minnesota, and then Massachusetts.
Right. Yeah. So, the top three are those states that end pretty much the earliest. So I guess that would make sense. Like I said, those deer moving out of their like fall ranges and heading towards deer yards, when you get that first, I wouldn't say the first big snow, but when it gets really cold and snowy and you get into December, they kind of vacate and they become pretty vulnerable to hunting pressure, I guess. Or not pressure, just hunting in general. They're all kind of confined in one area and they're not doing well. We have tough winters, and so I don't think we want to put extra stress on the deer into that winter, if that makes sense. I think that's probably part of the rationale there. Although, to be honest, I haven't actually talked to like our biologist about that, but I think I can infer based on, what we know that that's probably the reason.
Right. And what are your tags like out there?
Pretty much all over the counter. That's pretty common for all the Northeast states, actually. But yeah, for New Hampshire, we have, so let me think. So when you buy a hunting license, you get a firearms tag. That's one tag. That can be used for a buck. And then we actually have doe days. So particular days where that tag is good to shoot a doe. And those are usually the first few, it depends on the unit you're in, but usually the first few days of the muzzleloader season and the first few days of the rifle season, depending on the population dynamic of each, management unit. So you have that tag. You can also buy, so I guess I should back up. During the muzzleloader season, if you shoot a deer, you use your firearms tag. So you can't shoot a buck with a muzzleloader and then shoot another buck with a rifle or a firearm when the firearm season comes in. So that firearms tag serves for both firearm and muzzleloader season. You can also fill it with your bow during firearm season, but it is during one of those seasons. You can't during the muzzleloader season, which I think they may be changing that. It doesn't make much sense, but anyway. Then you have the ability to buy an archery permit, and that comes with an archery tag that is either sex. And then you have the opportunity to buy what they call a special archery permit as well, which gives you another additional tag, which is buck only. So you can actually shoot 3 bucks in New Hampshire. One with a firearm or muzzleloader and 2 with a bow, or I guess you could shoot all 3 with a bow if you wanted to, but yeah. So, the interesting thing is that even with the ability to shoot 3 bucks, there is only a percentage of people that will do that. And that's because it's a challenge. It's not because they don't want to or the lack of trying. It's hard to kill deer here.
Now I'm going to ask this question before I ask another one. It's how are you?
Let me back up. If I kind of totally missed part of that too. I will say there are 2 units in the southern part and southeastern part of the state where you can buy doe tags as well. And I think there's 2 available in each unit. And those are good for all seasons. So there is an opportunity to shoot, additional does. And those are some of the more highly populated suburban type units, close to Massachusetts and the coast. So that's, I guess, important to add.
And those are only down south?
Yep, they're not available I think, like I said, there's 2 units. There's not a ton of units in New Hampshire. I think there's maybe 10 or so, something like that. So 2 of 10. I don't know if there's 10. There may be 12, there may be 14, there may be 8. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, I'd say maybe like 10 to 15% of the state you can shoot additional does if you have the tags for them.
And how are you finding success out there? What are you doing? What are you looking for?
Well, I think most of my success late has been in the more mountainous stuff and in the bigger woods. Most of it. I had a variety of stuff, but I'd say I spend most of the time, up at higher elevations and deeper in. So that means probably a mile plus from any road or access point, oftentimes up closer to 2 miles. I try to find places that have logging going on or had logging going on, because I know there's going to be a concentration of deer on that, good habitat and that early succession regrowth. And I try to find those places that are, behind a locked gate or up a mountain where it's tough to get to. And I look for those places on the map, scout them, and run cameras and try to figure out if there's a buck in those types of areas that I want to hunt. I'm also looking for pretty specific topography that lends itself to effective hunting strategy, because I think if you have monotonous habitat and not much topography, it becomes, and we do have some of that here. We have, thousands of acres that aren't cut, and they're, relatively, I don't want to say flat, but rolling and nothing really distinct when you look at like a topographical map compared to some other parts of the state. I think and there's good deer in those areas. I just think they're difficult to hunt. There's nothing that really concentrates them and focuses deer activity or funnels movement. So I'm looking for areas where, I'm away from people, the habitat is quality, and there's topography there, and to kind of funnel deer and whatnot. Seems like that's kind of the mix. And then once I find those, I'm basically looking for sign, and there's usually deer in them if I can find them. So it's not like I'm have to figure out if there's deer there. There's usually some, at least. It's just I'm trying to figure out if there's a buck I'm interested in hunting. So, a buck of the right age class and, right size. And then when I find him, I'm kind of zoning in on him and spending time scouting, running more cameras, and then, eventually hunting him. But the biggest thing is targeting these deer that are bigger and older. You can't shoot big old deer if you're not hunting where they're at. And you've probably heard that 100 times, but that's the truth. So you got to be where they are. So you got to find them first. So that's, half the battle. But once I find them, because I'm looking at areas that are pretty, I won't say easy places. No, they're not easy, but they're predictable. The movement's predictable, and the habitat, how they interact with the habitat's predictable because it is set up in a certain way. And so once I find that deer, because I'm only looking in those places, I have a pretty legitimate shot at killing it.
When you're doing e-scouting, what are you looking for on the maps?
I'm looking for, first off, I want to be away from any population center. So like major towns. I used to not want to be near like big hiking locations or the tourist stuff, because we have a fair amount of that. But I realize that it seems like hunters stay away from those places, and hikers aren't trying to hunt. So some of those places actually could be really good places to hunt. We have the Appalachian Trail runs through New Hampshire. So we have a lot of hikers in some places. The White Mountains National Forest is a big tourist attraction. And there's some great deer in there and great places to hunt. So I don't necessarily stay away from that, but it seems like, major towns, major roads, honestly, too, like it's easy to get to. So I try to stay away from there and get out away from, we'll call it civilization. There's not a lot in New Hampshire that's like, we'll say uncivilized or true wilderness, but there's some pretty big pieces of woods that you can get away from anything. So I'm looking for those. Then I really prefer elevation. Like I want to be up high because that's going to cut off, say I cut out 80% of the people because I went far away, we'll say, and then I cut another, half of those people out because I go up high because I don't want to hike up a mountain. Or have some creative access. Sometimes we'll go across like a lake and hunt the backside of a lake or hunt an island or something like that. So I'm trying to get away from people and getting it not only in an area that's, somewhat remote, but get into the remote spots within the remote, if you will. And then once I find those areas, I'm literally looking for habitat diversity. That's what it comes down to. I like to see like 3 or more different habitat types come together. It seems like, and that can look like a lot of different things, but for me, it's like, I'd say the 4 is like, I cut hardwood, softwood, hardwoods, and then softwoods, so different forest types converging. Those edges or seams between the two seem to be good. And then swamps are good as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, and where they all come together. And then if I can find some topographical feature that coincides with the cover, probably found a pretty good spot to focus deer movement, and can be a really productive place to hunt.
Johnny Knight here made a comment. He said, I'm hunting a public spot right outside city limits and off a hiking trail, and have some amazing bucks on my trail cams.
Yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of a hiking trail, that's for sure. Those deer are definitely used to people going on it. And I actually think that you can use that to your advantage to access your hunting spots by using those hiking trails. So whenever I hunt near those, I use them as much as I can to get in and out, because you kind of have a free pass going in and out of those areas, because those deer are used to it. I think once you get off them, they smarten up pretty quick. But if you can hunt a place where you don't have to go very far off, I've killed, one of the bucks on the wall back there is specifically that. I killed that probably 50 yards off a hiking trail.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, this year I'm really trying to put like a scarecrow up on my tree and like a t-shirt, because I strongly feel like I live in a neighborhood and I got deer running around, and they're not scared of people. They get used to the smell, they get used to the noise and people walking around. And when I was going to college at WMU, I'd see 10-point, 12-point bucks walk in the middle of the campus, and I was like, shit, they're not scared of anything. So what if I took the mentality of, what if I get the deer out in the woods used to my scent and being out in the woods? So it's something I kind of want to see if I can basically kind of train them like cattle, basically.
It'd be interesting to see. Yeah, you should try it and see what you find.
Yeah, it's something I know it's risky, but at the same time it could pay huge dividends if it works out correctly.
I think the risk is that they just avoid that area because they think you're always sitting there.
Right.
They just decide, I'm never going by that stand. No, every time I go, he's there. Or they get used to it. It's probably going to be one or the other, but yeah, it's worth, right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
All right, Brett. So we're kind of winding down here close to the end of the show here. I want to ask, what would you tell to a non-resident hunter to prepare for to hunt your state? Because it seems like it's kind of a hard state to hunt.
It is. It's a very challenging state for it's a very challenging state for a resident who has a lot of time to hunt. So I would say it's extremely challenging for a non-resident. I would say that so we have a big deer tracking culture here. So if people from the Midwest aren't familiar with what that is, we wait till it snows, we grab our rifle and we follow a buck's track in the snow and chase them down and shoot them sometimes. And so I would say you should do that if you're a non-resident, because you can get into a big piece of woods, cut a buck track in the snow and kill them on your first day. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but there's potential for that, and it does happen. Enough that I can say it's worth your time. If you're going to come here with no snow and try to kill a big buck, man, especially if you have no experience in this landscape, we have low deer densities compared to the rest of the country. You're probably going to struggle. It may take you, there's a learning curve here, and it may take you, a couple of years to be successful. Now, if you like doing super hard, challenging stuff, then have at it. All of the things I outlined before would be probably a good direction to go in. I would say there's you could look for some suburban stuff too. We have some of that as well in the southern and eastern part of the state. Get some good permission and a subdivision that may be effective as well, but that's easier said than done. But I would say, tracking is your best opportunity. Wait for November, early December, watch the forecast, learn a little bit about how to track deer. It's not, people tend to overcomplicate tracking deer, and there are definitely some nuance and experience things, but at the end of the day, you just have to find a buck track and be persistent and stay on it and just be relentless. That's the most important part of it. So that would be what I would suggest as a non-resident. I love, I travel all over the place, so I meet a lot of people. And we have really good turkey hunting, and we have big turkey camps every year. People come from all over the place to hunt turkeys. but we don't have that so much on the deer hunting side. So whenever I tell someone to come up, I'm like, hey, you should come up and do some tracking. Yeah, because you can have a real chance of success in a long weekend or a week of hunting, I would say, if conditions are right. Whereas, man, if you don't have that snow and you're just like either still hunting or you're trying to sit in a stand and scout, not that you couldn't do it, but I hate to say it, but I'd probably bet against you being successful here on short time as an RS. And it's just the reality of what it is. So yeah, that would be your thing. It really does take a lot of time, a lot of scouting. It's just, and it's partially why I love hunting here. I've traveled all over, and I find myself spending my Novembers in New Hampshire now because of the challenge. I really do enjoy it. So yeah, it is definitely the Edmonton bow zone in Canada. Those deer are like super aware of their surroundings, and to kill a big deer in Canada in the bow zone with a bow is a huge challenge. But in general, I'd say probably New Hampshire. And I'm not just saying like Vermont and Maine, like the Adirondacks, those are all very similar landscapes and really difficult time. But I'd say, just for the sake of this podcast, New Hampshire is the hardest place that I've hunted, and I've hunted in a lot of different states. So just to put it in perspective.
So it sounds like if you really want to test your limits as a hunter or to better yourself as a hunter, go up to New Hampshire then.
Yeah,
really,
I think
really
you're gonna, if you're not from here, you'll be like, man, this kind of sucks. Like, I can't even find you're like, geez. It's like, yeah, I think a lot of people will get discouraged and lose interest, to be honest with you, if they're from areas that the Midwest or even maybe the South. Even in the West, it's tough to see deer, it's tough to kill deer, it's tough to find deer. It's just a really challenging place to hunt. But like I said, it is challenging, and when you are successful, it's pretty meaningful.
Well, I got some final questions I want to ask you here, and they're like yes or no type questions.
Okay.
What's one state that you want to hunt in that you haven't hunted yet?
Ooh, that's a good question. Can I do two?
Sure.
So I want to hunt whitetails in Idaho, and I want to hunt whitetails in West Virginia. Those two are on my list of places I really want to hunt. Just got to find the time to do it.
Yeah. I can see Idaho. That seems like a fun state. Talking to Troy Pottinger back in a couple episodes back, man, that seems like a territory that I really want to try.
Yeah, his hunting is, although across the country, there's a lot of similarities in the areas and the way that I hunt, and the way that he hunts. Yeah.
All right, so you can't pick your state, but what would be a state that you'd want to move to solely just for hunting?
Oh, man. That'd be a Providence. It'd be Alberta.
Alberta?
For sure. Yeah, 100%.
That's a good one.
I go up there every year, and I mean, the whitetails are next level. They're hard to kill, but they're also about the biggest in the world. Not only that, though, you can hunt mule deer and elk and moose and bison and mountain goats and sheep, and they have everything there if you're a resident. Right. So yeah, I would take that, like top notch whitetail hunting. That's still a super challenge, since I do like the challenge. And yeah, the opportunity to hunt pretty much every big game species in North America. And maybe, I don't know if they have muskox, whatever, polar bears, but I know they have grizzlies. I don't think you can't hunt them, I don't think, but yeah, so that's got everything. And I do love the North. I'm partial to it. So
yeah. That, I feel like those whitetails out there are like in a world of their own. Like they are just a different breed of whitetail deer. It's like they're like Godzilla compared to small little baby deer that we got running around here in the States.
I mean, there's definitely some big deer, in Maine and in, say, Iowa and, some of those states. But it seems like on average, those Canadian deer they're just huge deer, antler and body.
And the mass.
200-inch deer that's 300 pounds, Yeah. Pretty wild. Oh, yeah, the mass, just in the chocolate horns. They got it all. They're awesome.
Right.
They're special animals up there. And like I said, they're not easy to bow hunt. They have been chased by cats and wolves, as long as time, and they are with it, and they're in tune to their surroundings big time. I think they're more with it than our deer for sure here. Our deer are tough to kill, but those deer seem like they're super cautious. I wouldn't say they're spooky. Like, you get some of those southern deer that are like real spooky and like glitchy and like, fast, like move out of the way, you're out of the next county before your arrow gets there. They're not quite like that, but they're just super methodical and cautious the way they move around, and they're very observant and tuned into their environment and notice any little thing that's off. And there's just very, very little forgiveness up there, which I love. It's kind of the best of both worlds. It's hard hunting with the ultimate prize of, the potential for an I was actually hunting a 200-inch deer up there last year. So they're up there for sure.
Wow. Last two rapid fire questions here. What animal is on your bucket list to hunt, and with what animal?
With what animal?
With what weapon?
Oh, okay. Moose with a bow, I would say, is the number one thing right now.
I like that one. And the last one, what is one thing that you can think of that we can do or could do, we should do or could do to improve the hunting community?
Stop criticizing how other people hunt and stop comparing ourselves to everybody. And don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Hunt for your own personal reasons and be accepting of others that hunt for different reasons than you do. As long as, once again, they're not abusing the resource and they're doing things legally. And I guess, I don't want to criticize other hunters if at all possible, but there's definitely people out there that are doing things that aren't great for the community when it comes to public perception. So I would say let's have let's be cognizant of how we're being seen. But other than that, yeah, I would say, hey, stop worrying about other people doing. Worry about yourself. Enjoy your own experience and hunt for your own reasons.
Yeah. Like, for instance, like this new day and age of trophy management type hunting. I'm not saying there's anything against it or anything like that, but you got a lot of people out there still that are just out there. They just want to hunt for meat, and they don't care if it's a spike or whatever. Sure. They just want the meat in the freezer, and they just love going out there to hunt.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm cool with, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the high fence thing. Personally, I don't know how I don't know if I think it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know enough about it, I guess I'll say. So I'm not gonna comment. Personally, I don't. That's not really hunting to me. And it's more harvesting or killing, and that is what it is. I think when it's not regulated by the state, right? I should say it's not regulated in the same seasons or in the same tags as the rest of the state, when it's probably not the same thing as hunting. But other than that, I don't care if guys are managing thousands of acres and planting tons of food and doing all this stuff, and they have $5 million farms, or they're just getting out there with their kid, or they're hunting with me, whatever. I don't, do whatever makes you happy, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I think that's the important takeaway.
Well, Brett, I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show and taking time out of your day and talk with us. I really appreciate it. If there's people that want to reach out to you and learn more about you and learn more about Northeast hunting, is there a way they can reach out to you? Yeah,
they can go on my Instagram, BrettJoy22, if they have specific questions about me or the way I hunt. But the best way to see our content and to learn about the Northeast is to go subscribe to Just Hunt Club on YouTube, or follow us on Instagram. That's where most of my content goes. I'm slowly trying to spend less time on social media, we'll say. So I'm not on as much as I used to, and I don't post as frequently as I do, but I still do create a lot of content, and it's all lands on Just Hunt Club's platform. So if you're interested in that, check it out. We have numerous hunts from the Northeast, from New Hampshire, lots of big bucks going down, and lots of information for someone that is interested in it. And it's definitely a unique style of hunting up here.
Well, I'm definitely going to be watching that before I go to bed tonight because, yeah, I'm interested to see what it's like more up there to hunt. So, but again, Brett, I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you again, man. I greatly appreciate it. And we definitely have to stay in touch, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Brett. I hope you have a good rest of your night, brother.
You too.
Oh, man. The hunt up there in the Northeast, that just seems like it's a challenge to tracking type hunting. I've never done it. Obviously, it's something that like I said earlier, I think it's something that if you really want to test yourself as a hunter and to see what it really takes to find and harvest mature deer, I think the Northeast is what you're going to find the best way to do it, to test yourself and to become a better hunter. I mean, you can go anywhere and like Iowa, Kansas, stuff like that. Your typical type hunting, if you want to call it that, of hang a stand, food plot, ooh, yay, giant deer. But if you really want to push your limits and really put in some work to be a better hunter, I strongly believe, after talking to people up in the Northeast is where to go to really challenge yourself as a hunter and really find these old, mature, giant bucks. But with that being said, that's going to conclude another show, the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. Like I said, if anyone ever wants to become a guest on the show, feel free to send me a message on social media. I feel like it's a tongue twister for me when I say social. It's like when people say they can't say the word cinnamon or whatever. I don't know. Or you can send me an email at brettboven@whitetailadvantage.com. We do make a post at around 8 in the morning on the day of Tuesday or Thursday of the guest that we're going to have on for that day. So, but if you have a question that you specifically want us to ask the guest, if you can't get on the show, send us a message and we'll feel free to ask for you. So also, if you ever want to be a guest on the show, like I said, send us a message, send me an email. I'm never going to tell anybody no that can't come on the show. But with that being said, that's like I said, it's going to conclude another episode. We'll see everyone Thursday, July 25th for episode 91 with Derek. So thanks, guys. Hope you have a good rest of your night.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.